All right, let's talk about some of the bleakest zombie films, or I'm sorry, infection films I've ever seen, with 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. 28 Days came out in 2003. This is directed by Danny Boyle, and it's funny to think about how long ago these films actually came out. This is like a year after Resident Evil, based on the video game, of course. It feels like a shorter amount of time ago that these films came out, but yeah, almost passing 20 years now. It's insane. It's a British film, directed by Danny Boyle, already said. And it's really, really depressing and dark and bleak and really hard to watch. Like, I mean, even just like the grainy style and the cameras that they decided to use and how Danny Boyle decided to frame it and color palettes or colorize it or how whatever either happened in post production or with the equipment being used really gave it such a realistic atmosphere to the point where I mean it's a really difficult film to watch for its subject matter, but also because of how post-apocalyptic, should I say, realistically post-apocalyptic it seems. It really feels like the end of the world, and it's really, it's just depressing. It's a really depressing film. And then the follow-up, 28 Weeks Later, it tones it down a couple notches, but you still get your segments in this movie that are just as bleak and dark as the first film. What we have going on with the first film, it stars, blanking on his name currently, Cillian Murphy, who has made a huge name for himself since being in this film. So has actually Naomi Harris. She's popped in a lot of American and British productions. She pops in a lot of stuff, but this is one of her first roles that, at least one of the first that I've discovered for sure, and I'm pretty sure that it's one of her first roles in general. But yeah, we open up the film where there's this laboratory and there's a bunch of like test monkeys in it, and these animal rights activists are coming into this plant or this laboratory and trying to free the monkeys and basically rescue them from these being experimented on. Essentially, what they don't realize is that the monkeys are infected with rage, and one of them manages to escape. He bites one of the activists, and then the infection spreads, and it automatically flashes to 28 Days Later, where Cillian Murphy's character wakes up in a hospital, and it's not really said what happened to him. He was in some kind of accident, so he was in a coma. Like throughout the whole plague and the whole infection spreading. So he wakes up to this post-apocalyptic world and has absolutely no clue what's going on. Everybody kind of just disappeared. It's got to be terrifying to be in that situation, like waking up in the hospital and then the world you live in is empty. So it's kind of fucked up, but he goes out. Everything is so eerie because everything is so quiet, and this is a British film, so it's all taking place in London, and it's shot well. It's grimy on purpose. So I mean, it doesn't like it's not none of the visuals are striking. None of the it's not out of this world cinematography or anything. It's purposely done so it can be dark and bleak and grim and terrifying and depressing. But he comes across these. Well, first of all, he comes across this church which he goes into, and the church is packed with bodies, and it it's one of those movies that when you look at it, you can like smell what you're seeing. It's so gross and it's so like dark and sinister. These bodies are just scattered all over the church. And then this is one of my favorite scenes as a child. This is part of the movie that I always remember is when there's knocking on the door and you just hear banging, like bang bang bang, and then there's these huge wooden doors with this like crack of light coming through, and then the door bursts open and the priest is like twitching and he's trying to walk, but just the way I don't know, Danny Boyle just had an eye to film this way, and the way the priest is twitching, it's like you don't know what's wrong with him or it or whatever it is, and you don't know like what the priest is like suffering from. He's just twitching, and you don't know if he's trying to like communicate with Cillian Murphy's character, or if he's just out of his mind, or if he doesn't know who or what he is, which is clearly the situation. But it leaves you in this mental state where you're like you're trying to figure out what's going on. Like your brain doesn't clue into what exactly is happening on screen. Your brain is kind of like trying to figure it out as the scene is happening, which is very very unique to cinema. If anybody understands what I'm talking about, you can look at something. You ever look at something and you know like, oh, that's a human, that's an animal, but you ever look at something too and you're like, I can't really tell what it is. It's so alien. It's kind of like that with this scene. I'm rambling about that, but it's a really well done church scene, so I really wanted to talk about that one specifically. But afterwards, he's running away from these infected, and then he comes across Celine, and she's with a partner, Mark, I think his name is. And they're surviving themselves, and Celine is a badass, played by Naomi Harris. And she is very strict, and she's all about survival. She does not give a shit about anybody but her own survival, and she will do anything necessary to survive, and she makes this clear from the very beginning. It's really brutal when she slaughters the fuck out of Mark at Cillian Murphy's house. I'm forgetting his name now. Jim is his name. I forgot. I was blanking like a motherfucker there, but Jim's house. And yeah, when Celine slaughters the fuck out of Mark there, it's brutal. There's some things that I actually found in this film. I haven't watched this in quite a few years, and there's things that I never remembered happening in this movie. One of them is the fact that they play. This is probably because I never heard this song before my last viewing of this movie, but they play that religious song "Abide with Me," which was featured also in Midnight Mass, which is literally probably my favorite series ever. They're playing that at when Jim gets to his house and sees his parents dead, which again, so hard to watch and so freaking depressing. It's uncomfortable to watch the scenes in this film. It really is. Like, this is a film I don't even like to watch too often because it is just a dreadful experience and you just need a full cold shower afterwards. But, like, when he walks into his parents, and again, he's coming from out of a coma, he has no idea what happened to the world, and his parents offed themselves with pills or something. And Celine's like, they died peacefully. You should be grateful. And just horrible stuff. But anyways, they're playing Abide with Me through that entire scene, and I don't remember that happening. So a few things like that happen in the movie that are kind of first time I'm noticing them, essentially. They keep on surviving. They come into another character played by Brendan Gleeson, I think his name is. Famous British actor. He's been in Bruges. He recently played in Banshees of Inisherin. He was in the crocodile movie, Lake Placid. He's been in a lot, Brendan Gleeson. He's awesome. And his character is surviving with his daughter in this movie as well, and then they come across them, and they go up to their apartment, and then they kind of form this pact, and Selena is hesitant to everything and everybody because, like I said, she's extremely selfish to a flaw because she becomes a little too hard ass and not. She's good if she's good on her own because she knows everything to do for survival, but she's almost a threat to how selfish she is throughout this film and stuff. Like, she has that little piece of caring in her soul, but she's just she's really in it for herself, and you can definitely tell. But then they find this military base, or they hear of this military base. It's being broadcasted basically, and this military, these soldiers essentially are broadcasting this message to bring survivors, and they're mentioning a location and come here. We have salvation. We have food. Yada yada. But they don't know how old this broadcast is. This broadcast could be weeks or even months. It could have been broadcasted 2 days after the infection, for all they know. So they have no, they're it's such a blind risk to go and seek out. But in the situation they're in, they also have no other options really. So they decide to go seek out this military base, and once they get there, they think they're in Salvation, but it ends up being that they're not. Now, it's tough because it's a question of morals essentially, and the soldiers basically want to. They're all about procreation. They want to keep the world going. They want to keep the human population going, and it's one of the soldiers, the main soldier, the leader soldier, reveals to Jim that they've been in search for women for a hell of a long time, and now that they came across two women, they don't want to let him leave, and they want to essentially force themselves upon them and create babies, whether they like it or not, and that's not cool. But at the end of the world, like it's very realistic and it's very believable that a situation would happen like that. And most, well, I'm not gonna say most men. That's that's not the issue. But a lot of men in power, it's believable that they would, their morals would go completely out the window, and they would think it's totally okay to repopulate, whether women want to or not, kind of thing, which is really disturbing and really fucked up to think about. I mean, the whole situation that is created in this film is super fucked up. And I, again, another part of this film that stands out to me like crazy is when they have one of their soldiers who is infected chained up, and I always remember this guy. He would always haunt my nightmares. Chained by the neck, so he's in rage mode and he's trying to get at the soldiers, but he's being held back by his neck. So, and just the rage that Danny Boyle put into these creatures and monsters and zombies, if you will. They're not zombies, and people will fight you over it, saying they're infected, not zombies. But this infected person is insane. And then just the way this guy vomits blood, it is so dreary. It is so friggin' like, I'm probably gonna repeat words, but like bleak and dreadful to watch. And you can tell this guy is like, he's puking blood because he's angry. Just think about that for a second. This is a rage virus that makes you so pissed off and bloodshot red, furious that you vomit blood. You basically vomit, your innards essentially, because you're that pissed off. Imagine being that pissed off. You're so pissed you barf blood. I don't get it. But I always thought about that as a kid. It's like, can you imagine being so pissed off that you vomit blood? Like, insane. But like, it's the infected are very disturbing to watch in this film. They're very unique. I've never seen, even like before and after, infected quite like this. I've seen the sadness. I did it for a 31 Days of Horror, but even that infected is a different kind of infected that they put here. This is just so scarily realistic, and what you can imagine would happen if there was a virus that actually, that was kind of rabies like, that if it happened in real life, how it would affect people. It feels very real, like I said. But the last like 20 minutes of the movie, again, is very disturbing. You have the main character played by Cillian Murphy, Jim, basically turning into an animal and protecting Celine and the young girl who was the Brendan Gleeson's daughter. And he's just going animalistic, like he's with his bare hands, he's tearing soldiers apart, and he's doing a whole stealth thing all over the base, and it's pouring rain, so it just adds more to that dreariness. And it's just a really fucked up climax where everything's dark and grimy and bloody, and then he gets on the soldier, and there's the famous 28 days later eye gouge that I always have to look away from, honestly. And I'll get to the second movie too, because they do another one in that. But the eye gouge always fucked me up. And it's that last 20 minutes of the film, including that eye gouge thing, that a lot of it I just have to turn away from because it just makes me sick to my stomach. Like, it's a really disturbing zombie film. Sorry, I said it again. It's a really disturbing infected movie film. I'm not even doing it on purpose. It's an infection film. But yeah, so some other things, because I wrote some things down that I had forgotten about. I had forgotten about that scene where they focus on Manchester in the distance and it's all on fire. I'm pretty sure a lot of that is CGI, but if it is, however they did it, they made it look very realistic of a city being on fire, and I had forgotten about that scene. I forgot about the whole Valium situation where they decide to take Valium to like calm themselves down. And in the past, I have been prescribed Valium, and it is like a perfect calming drug. So I know exactly how relaxed they are taking it. And the father is very skeptical on giving his daughter any because they all want to take like 2 pills, which would definitely knock you out. But he tells her to only take half. I really like the whole scene where they go shopping in the grocery store and they're literally just taking anything they want, and Brendan Gleeson of course goes straight to the booze and he's like, don't take that crap, just take the top shelf shit, man, it's all free. And he's taking like, he's got like 3 bottles under his arm. That totally would be me in that situation. And it's a weird song that they play in that. It's I've always the music that they played in that grocery store scene, I've always found strange and just sounded weird. I've never heard a song like that. It's hard to describe unless you heard it and know what I'm talking about. And then the other scene I forgot about is in that restaurant or wherever it was where this kid attacks Jim, this little kid, and then Jim is like holding him down but struggling on what he wants to do because he basically has to kill a child, and his morals are like he doesn't know what to do with the situation because he's seeing this kid attack him, and it's like a little like 8-year old or whatever. But I don't remember the kid saying "I hate you." Now it's kind of weird because if it's the kid, I don't think it's the kid saying it because these infected can't talk. So if it's the kid literally saying it, I think that's stupid. But I don't think that's the case. I think Jim is hearing it. Jim is staring at this kid and so confused, and then he kind of like maybe hallucinates, I hate you, because the kid is just so full of rage, and that's what he hears the kid say. But I never remembered that. I don't recall the kid saying, I hate you. This is the first time I heard it. I had even put the subtitles. I'm like, did that kid speak? And I put on the subtitles, it just says, I hate you. Personally, I mean, if I was directing, I would cut that out because I liked it better when I didn't hear the kids say I hate you, but it is what it is. And that's 28 Days Later. That's the essential plot of it, and then at the end of the movie, it's a happy ending. This does have some deleted scenes and alternate endings, though, which give different perspectives to how the film will end. I won't spoil those. I won't get into them, but they do change the ending of the movie a little bit if you check out those alternate endings or deleted scenes. But the ending of the theatrical cut, they flag down a helicopter. They have this sign saying "Save me," and then all is peaceful, or is it? 28 Weeks Later is really good too. I mean, both these films I gave a 4-star to. What happens in this one is the opening is one of the best openings to a horror movie ever. They do a really good job where these people are hiding out in a house. All the lighting looks fantastic, and there's an attack on the house from infected, and just the way the shaky camera happens and the way they're shooting everything, and the immense danger and the sense of danger that these characters are in, or you're seeing them in, is terrifying. This is one thing about the 28 Days Later films too, that ever since I first watched the original, this is one of the hardest enemies to survive from. Like, there's no way. There's you'd have to be so fast and so strong and smart too, and just your agility would have to be through the roof to be able to survive this horde of sprinting zombies that like just throw and cough blood everywhere. That like in the last movie you get a drop in your eye and you're fucked. Like surviving these things would be, and there's some situations that happen in both these movies that the characters do escape from, and you look at it and you're almost like, you know what? I don't buy it. I don't see these guys surviving these situations. And this opening scene, and in 28 weeks later, with this guy getting away from like five or six infected, just swarming the house and tearing everything apart. Crazy shit. But the guy gets away, everybody else in the house perishes, and then it starts to kind of recap on what happens up to 28 weeks. And they contain the virus. Everything. It's mentioned in the first film that there were like spreads in Paris and New York or something, but in this movie, it just seems like they contained everything in Britain. They don't really talk about anything that happened outside of Britain. Um, in this movie, it seems that the infection was just quarantined and maintained in Britain. So they have the military in there. The American military comes in. So there's American and British characters in this one. The main characters are British, but there's like the American army and soldiers and all that. And they have everything contained. And the guy that escaped from that house at the beginning of the movie and survived, he's brought into this quarantine section and he meets his kids. His kids, luckily, were on vacation in some other country. I think it was still the UK. I think they were in like Scotland or something, but they could have been somewhere else. Regardless, they come back and they're safe, obviously, because they were away from the widespread of this infection. They were nowhere near it, and they reconnect with the dad, and the dad talks about losing his wife because his wife was in that house, and he says that their mother died and it's just him left, and yada yada. But the kids get a sense that they want to go back to their like childhood home, outside of the quarantine zone. All of London is basically evacuated, and everybody who like all the survivors are living in one isolated location. But they sneak themselves away from quarantine and outside of the city. The security and the soldiers are not doing their job very well in this movie, I must say. It's probably for convenience mostly, but in reality, I think the soldiers would be a lot tougher than they are in this film, because these kids pretty much escape to the city no problem. Even one like sees him. Jeremy Renner is in this movie, which is cool to see him in here. Yeah, and yeah, the kids they go to their childhood home and they see their mom there, and their mom's alive. Like they're like, what the fuck? Dad said she was dead, and she's alive in the house, and she doesn't seem that hurt. She's like dirty and stuff, but she's certainly showing no signs of infection. That's for sure. And they bring her back to the quarantine again. Really hard scene to watch where they're spraying her down and washing her down and disinfecting her and everything. She's screaming and wailing. It's just fuck, if you want to be depressed, like, the bleakness is just on overload with these movies. Like I said, this one tones it down a bit, but it's still there. And then they realize she must be like carrying some kind of something in her genetics is not adapting to the virus. So she's basically a key to the cure. And who comes in to visit her while she's like strapped to a bed? The husband. How does he get in there? I don't fucking know. Security's asleep or some shit, but he literally just walks in. I think like the door's left ajar, and he just opens the door and he just goes to talk to his wife. And then he makes out with her, and then he gets infected. And then you have your second eye gouge scene, which I always have to look away from, because the eye gouge, I get the violence and I get the appeal for horrorness because it is horrific, but fuck, I can't watch somebody place their two thumbs into eye sockets. I can't even imagine how much that would hurt. How much that would freaking kill. Literally. I can't imagine. So yeah, he single-handedly fucks everything up, and everything goes haywire again. And what does the Rose Byrne say? Rose Byrne is also in this movie. Step 1 is defeat the infected or kill off the infected. Step 2 is containment. If containment fails, extermination. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like that. So it goes to a point where the infection, again, like it did the first time, is spreading like wildfire and way too fast to get controlled. So the soldiers are given free rein to just kill everybody because that's the only option. And it's horrible and horrific and bleak as hell. But yeah, it just turns into a shooting spree, and these kids are trying to survive. Their dad is dead now. I like how Jeremy Renner's character, his name is Doyle. He goes rogue because he starts to realize that this situation is fucked up. But him and Rose Byrne obviously take a liking to these children, and they start to realize that morality's out the window when it comes to these soldiers. These soldiers will shoot to kill. So Jeremy Renner's character Doyle, just basically he's in it for himself now. He's here to protect the kids, and he's like he's firing against the soldiers, and he's doing everything to have these kids survive. And it turns into like a situation where these, there's nowhere safe to go now because you have infected everywhere. You have the soldiers against you because they're there to kill everybody now. Infected, or well, they don't know who's infected or not at this point, and it's just crazy. There's a scene that's reminiscent of Wreck, the Spanish movie Wreck, and I'm pretty sure it came out the same year this movie did. So I don't know if it. There's a scene like in tunnels and like underground where everything is like green and black, like night vision, and it reminded me of Wreck completely. Now, the director of this film, Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a Spanish director, and Wreck is a Spanish film. So he might have taken inspiration from Wreck, he might have not, but the whole night vision scenes totally remind me of Wreck. Doyle's death is horrific because to save the children, he allows himself to get lit on fire by a flamethrower, and he just goes up like a torch. And again, thinking about that kind of death, like, make the deaths more brutal, why don't you? They're just insane. I really enjoyed the scene where a bunch of infected are getting mauled by a helicopter propeller. That was funny. It's gory. There's like body parts flying everywhere. It seems CGI, but obviously because they're not going to make a practical scene like that. But man, it's just there's just a bunch of infected. I almost said it. A bunch of infected being massacred all at once. It's a really great scene. It kind of reminds me a little bit in the vein of that scene from The Collection in the nightclub where the friggin' I forget what those things are. The compactor just mows everybody while the helicopter chopper blades mow all the infected kind of the same way. And yeah, it's like I said, it's an easier film to watch. I think they tried to push it more to the mainstream audience, although I wouldn't call this a mainstream horror film at all. It's still brutal. It's still disturbing. It's still heavy, like a heavy, hard film to watch. But the disturbing scenes are paced, separated, fewer and far in between. But when they happen brutally. Another actress, the young girl, the main girl, frig, what's her name? Why do I always blank on these names? Imogen Poots. She's in here. She's got these like piercing blue eyes that are very, very striking, and she's got this like striking face on her. Really pretty girl, and I liked her survival with her brother, and I liked the whole survival theme with them. And I can understand how Rose Byrne and Jeremy Renner's characters took it upon themselves to save these kids. And I wouldn't say like the father is a bad person. Just made some terrible decisions out of humanity, like out of being human. I can't blame him for any decision he made. They're horrible decisions, and like I said, the military is kind of failing hardcore, but I wouldn't say he's a bad guy at all. Maybe certain people would disagree, but he's a character definitely to discuss and talk about, because I think a lot of the characters in both of these films are very human, and they're very humanistic films, if that's even a word. And I think they represent humanity, and what would really happen kind of thing. And that's what makes them even harder to watch and even more disturbing. But I didn't think this video was going to go this long, but it's a lot to talk about. Maybe I should have done separate reviews for each film, but regardless, it is what it is, and that's 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Danny Boyle did a phenomenal job on the first one, and then Juan did a great job on its sequel. And unfortunately, we never got a 28 Months Later. Damn it. But I heard one is not happening, but hey, the future can bring anything, and these are staples in the horror genre, and certainly in the infected genre. Or if you're one of those who doesn't give a fuck and wants to call it a zombie movie, it's a great entry in the zombie genre as well, but you didn't hear it from me. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I will be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.